fear. I may be afraid of dogs and you may be afraid of cats, but the experience of fear is the same. If there's fear, if there's grief, and it's blocking you, you're identifying with it. See, disliking is identification too. Rejection is, or acceptance, are both identifying. It's both saying, I've got something I have to do about that. So if there's something that you either have to suppress or have to act out, have to do something about, that have to is keeping you from the quietness that exists. Right now, there is within you a place of complete silence, quiet, vast love, vast connectedness. Now, you don't have to create that place. It exists. All you have to do is let go of that which comes between you and that deeper being, if you will. I think what teachers are saying to you is if you have any preference, if you prefer pleasure to pain, then that attachment will be enough to keep you superficially on the levels where those thoughts arise. That's that part of it. And that's true, but we have to have such compassion with ourselves in this trip because our conditioning is so powerful. So powerful. Like that fellow sitting, being real quiet after a couple of hours, walks out of the bedroom, steps on the roller skate, and he's completely in duality once again, in a moment, before he's even hit the ground. So we acknowledge that those things are there, and we see, one of the most extraordinary ways of working with that stuff is simply noting liking, disliking. It's extraordinary. There is a branch of vipassana, of mindfulness, that has to do with simply noting whether your present state is pleasant or unpleasant, so that you just start to see patterns, variabilities, so that you start to see how mind conditioning automatically reacts, and you start to unhook that one. Is that speaking to what? I mean, it is absolutely so that the least bit of liking and disliking will continue the turning of the wheel of karma. But the very coming to that with fear or rejection of yourself that you don't know that one is the same turning of that same wheel. All we can do is accept that we like and we dislike. That the mind has been deeply, 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 deeply imprinted. And that it keeps sending up all kinds of thoughts and will long after it matters to you whether they're there or not. Fear will still arise long after you're not afraid. Because it has its own momentum. Liking and disliking will still arise. And I think what those teachers are saying to you is that any push and pull disturbs the waters. It's so. I think that we have to be able to keep our heart open in disturbed waters, however. You can't wait for your heart to open until you're quiet and calm and peaceful, because part of this process is acceptance of just what's happening now. Because you can't investigate it, can't let go of it, can't see it if you don't accept it. If you're pushing away your negativity, that's what Trungpa calls being negative in the negative. It's just subtler voice of negativity. And what we're saying is be aware of liking and disliking. Be aware of leaning towards certain events, pulling back from others, so that you don't live your life mechanically and compulsively. So that there's some space. So that you can desire something and not compulsively have to have it. Or you can be frightened and not compulsively have to withdraw.
Yesterday I found myself being envious of people who had specific deaths or that they were dying. But there was something that they could focus on to be grieving about or feel bad about or be upset about or whatever. And I felt bad about that and just stayed with that for a while and talked to a friend, and what came up was just gobs and gobs of old guilt. That I've been feeling bad for, or just grieving for about a year now. And there have been some appropriate things going on in my life, but it wasn't the potency of the grieving. And so would scratch my head and say, well, just sit with it for another month or another 2 months or another 3 months. And partly that's why I came here. I said, I have to find out what's going on. I'm just feeling worse and worse and guiltier and guiltier. And what came up last night when I was sitting, it was almost like original sin, that somebody used that term. And it was just like, it went way back, and it was like the moment I was born, I was bad. I was not right somehow. And I just don't know what to do with that. It's just like, did I bring that with me? I've done regressions and stuff. I was just like, ugh. And I had lots of support all the way growing up that I wasn't right. I sort of either created it or it was there or something. But it's affecting everything I do now. And it's just like, I feel good. Something good happens in my life and I feel bad. The better it gets, the worse I feel. And I guess I just have to keep going with that. But
you're getting back to a good root place, which is the same as the first experience of separateness. The way in which you first felt separate from the totality of what is sometimes called falling from grace or original sin. What have I done that made me lose my place in the sun, made me lose? It's always feeling like one thought away from where the action is, just always cut off, always alone. Yeah.
Part of this.
Yeah. And if you can see that inherent in the separateness, the identification with the separateness, is that feeling. There's no way out of that one, except that there is another part of you that is not separate. Yeah, I know you have.
Which make it feel worse.
I know you have.
Partly.
Yeah. It breeds the homesickness for God. But you can't push away your separateness. You can only allow. You allow. You allow. And you see that you bought in so deeply, so early, and that was it's the whole root structure of ego, is the sense of needful separateness. Because if you are all of it, you don't need anything. The minute you identify with the separateness, you need. It's not enough. You want back in. You want to come back. I mean, it's I recall in a regressive experience remembering the moment when I say apparently because it's not fully clear, it's just a feeling sense because it's preconceptual. I apparently bit my mother's breast or something, in which she pushed me away. And I experienced separateness. And I took it that I had done some act that had alienated me. I had lost the source through my own badness, wrongness, action, power. Okay. And that leads to the fear of using power, because you can hear it all. You can hear the whole, all the mishpacha come. It's like these are the qualities of the root of personality. We all have these personalities. That's the way. Personality has to do with separateness. And the whole structure is based on needful not enoughness. And the first time you meditate quietly and go behind the conceptual structure of this separate identity, and you see that it's mine, and experience enoughness, you feel this couldn't be me. How could I feel enough? How could schnook that I am feel enough? Like, how could I be beautiful? How could I be truth? How could I be love? How could I just be? Yeah, I know it. Yeah, of course. And it's interesting because we are so well learned about our not enoughness. And it's back to just the root moment of awakening of a sense. It's like pinching your toe and pinching the bedpost, and this is me and this is not me. It's those root moments of conceptual development of sense of separateness. That's where that root is. And since it's really at the root of conception, you can't get hold of it with the mind, because it lurks right where the mind where the mind began. So you just keep going back behind and behind and behind, and you rest in the being behind it, or within it, or embracing it. And after a while, you start to have the quality of your attitude towards personality, towards your ego changes. It goes from being something that is imprisoning you to a vehicle for playing in the world. It's like my MG. It's like the way I get around. Like you have an identity, you have a personality. You have a set of concepts about who you are and who everybody else is. But you're no longer living within them. You're just getting out of it. You're just realizing the prison, and you're realizing the possibility of escape from prison. Gurdjieff's line is beautiful. If you are going to escape from prison, the first thing you must realize is that you're in prison. If you don't know you're in prison, no escape is possible. See, and the realization of the prison only comes from the flickering moment when you have been outside of prison. Otherwise, it's all there is. That's all there is.
And what I've been grieving is losing the prison. It was real comfortable.
Sure.
It was very comfortable.
Well, it's the most familiar. You know how a dirty old bed that the sheets haven't been changed for weeks, everybody else would come in and say, "Yeah, you live here." To you, it's home, you know. I mean, it's, to the Collier brothers, I mean, all those newspapers were like, that's it. That's where it is. And no matter how slovenly and cans and rot and all, it's where you're used to it, you know. Cockroaches are my cockroaches somehow. They're not just cockroaches.
There was a picture in the Los Angeles Times, many of you have probably heard this story, several years ago, of a child who had been very, very badly abused by his mother. Cigarette burns, fractures in various states of mending, extremely malnutritive. And there's this picture, on either side of the mother is a police person, but they are not holding her. I mean, they're trying not to scare the child. They're trying to make it a very gentle. And there's a police matron carrying this child over her shoulder as she's walking from the room, and the child is yelling, "Mommy, Mommy!" Because hell is preferable to the unknown. It's familiar. It's very hard to let go of hell. We were going to get into something else earlier today, which just has not organically arisen. And what it is that a few women have come up to me in the course of the last couple of days, and it happens at most workshops, and shared about their early experiences of rape by a parent, or of molestation at one level or another, whether it involved penetration or not, sexual, being used as a sexual object by an adult. And we thought we might get into that, but it's my sense that it actually isn't necessary. You know, we might just do this. How many people have been sexually molested as children? Look around, those of you who have been sexually molested, and see how many others there are in the group. Yeah, probably. Actually, there's usually more than 10%.
so much to imprint us, so much to enforce that root separation to which Ram Dass was just referring. And that one is very potent. But I think what we're saying applies to that too. I think we've enough of the melodrama. Enough identifying ourselves with our separateness. In psychologically oriented group situations that this may be in some aspect reminiscent of to some of you, when emotions that have been hidden arise, then we start finding, because it hasn't been an awareness, it comes up and we say, oh, that's who I am. I'm my grief, I'm my fear, I'm my sexual identity, whatever. That's not who you are either. That's just more stuff. No need to gold plate our shit. Just stuff. Just stuff. Not that stuff is shit or good or bad. Just stuff. Let it come up and let it go. It's not like we're trying to dredge something up from a little bit deeper and say, oh, because that was below the level of awareness, that must be who I really am. No, we've just suppressed so much stuff. It's like the bottom of a pond. It accumulates the debris, all the reeds, all the dead animals, everything. Eventually gravity, which in our case is aversion, pushes it to the bottom of the pond, and it decays. And it will form a kind of crust that will seal the pond. And then water will stay in the pond real easy. Your ego will stay right up to the brim. When you crack the bottom of that pond and start taking up some of that shit, that's not the whole nature of the earth. You're still in the very superficial crust of who you really are. So as some of our crust comes up, just see it as more that's coming up and keep investigating it as process, as change, and keep going deeper, deeper, deeper. Just because things may not have been so readily available to you before doesn't mean that your fear is your true nature or your grief is your true nature. We're just trying to allow to arise what there is to arise, to see it as is, to see it in don't know. Wow, look at that. Look at the amount of anxiety I have. Look at the amount of self-interest. Fantastic. It's awfully beautiful. But don't stop there. That is just the beginning of a willingness to go deeper. Honor all that stuff as a way, in the same way that you honor every part of your body. Your fingers you honor, and your heart you honor. Now you can live without your fingers. You can't live without your heart, but you have to honor it all because it's all part of one thing. Honor the different appendages of accumulated karmic being that arise, but don't stop there. Don't get stuck in thinking now I'm this stuff unseen before. Yes?
Unfinished stuff that I've got to bring up first. And I'm becoming aware that I could keep that process going forever and ever, that I could keep resurrecting all of this stuff and in doing so creating more of it to resurrect at a later time. And it gets down to a choice. I think what you're saying is really true, that it will keep coming up on its own accord if you're open to it, but you can get on with it anyway.
Well, as you get on with it, the stuff still comes up. Actually, I'm no less neurotic than I was 20 years ago when I started meditating. I just have a whole different... In fact, the content of my mind might be a little bit more bizarre. He knows better than most. It's just that I'm not so identified with it. Because I'm not suppressing it, more and more of those things that may have motivated me before outside of awareness are now in awareness. It's not that I have any less fear, It's that, but I'm a lot less frightened.
We call the first part of these retreats the pressure cooker, in which we try to press down in so that the stuff comes up. And it's a therapist's delight, you know. I mean, it's like a nut sundae for a therapist. And,
so to speak. Yesterday was Nut Sunday.
And it's a very fine line, as you point out, of when you stop and move into the more spacious part of consciousness and when you keep pressing. Because if you keep pressing till you can keep producing the stuff, but if you keep pressing, you'll notice that people are being a little more conscious in the way they're presenting their material today. It's coming from a slightly different space. And if we went on a few more days, the whole thing would keep doing itself naturally until pretty soon, even though the stuff's coming up, as Stephen says, it's like, the way I say it is, I'm as neurotic as I used to be, it's just that my neurosis are now my friends. You know, I've gotten, oh, you're here again, you know, have tea, sit down and shut up, I'm busy writing. You know, it's like, instead of, you know, my God, it's my neurosis. You know? And it's interesting because as I was trained as a Freudian and taught and did therapy in the Institute, I was very committed to the reality of that stuff on the bottom of the pond, and let's get it up and get it up. And I saw that everybody just got, like Freud's thing, analysis terminable or interminable. You know, you can never finish it. It just goes on and on and on, feeding on itself. But I've noticed that with the kind of the meditative, spacious consciousness that you keep working on and developing, little by little, the meaning of that changes, and you don't is afraid to go into it because you know that you exist behind it. When you only think that's the only reality, it's very scary, because I'm going to be this wild animal, this destructive, lecherous, greedy, frightened, anxious animal. I mean, that's who Freud saw as the bottom line. And that's what this culture believes for the most part. It bought Freud, because Freud was a reflector of where people could get to in their inner being. But behind all that, here we are. We're going through a change that's a much deeper change. It's a cultural change, too. It's a cultural change. And there is a very pervasive support system emerging for just what we're doing here. Just what we're doing, which is interesting, too. Go ahead, where you're going with this.
Ram Dass is saying, and which is so very popular, is this idea that we're by nature evil. Because we've suppressed so much that when we go down a little deeper, we see this muck, this extraordinary suffering compressed with this decay. Let that come up. You know, you could be enlightened watching a moment of hatred. You could be enlightened watching the agitated mind, because it stops being so much content and you start to notice that it comes and goes. It comes uninvited. And we're inviting it to stay by identifying with it. It is a way we're holding on to our suffering. It doesn't matter what the content of the mind is. In essence, it doesn't. No thought is any better than any other thought. You don't get enlightened by thinking. You don't get free by... No thought will set you free. Because any thought will keep you in the mind, and who you are is much more than mind. So you must not block mind. You must let whatever's there have its life of its own, make friends with it, see its nature, investigate. But don't get lost in the identification that you're just a subtler whisper in the mind. It's all just stuff coming and going. And starting to meet it with a compassion, with a mercy for the magnitude of our conditioning's ability to draw us into separation again and again. Watching fear. I said you could be enlightened watching fear, because at first you'll see the content. Then you'll start to see, as we were saying, that this automatic quality, this impersonal quality, and you'll start to see process, stimulus response, fascinating. In fact, this experiment in truth can get so fascinating that someone will start a sentence which you sense is going to have some content in it, which is going to be threatening to you, and you'll say, far out, watch my mind now, there it goes, it's upset. And you'll be right with it from the subtlest vibration behind the kneecaps. And instead of being angry, you will become fascinated with life. The only reason for boredom is lack of attention. So then you'll start to see process. You'll go, wow. And the mind stuff won't draw you out so much because you just see how it comes and goes, imprints. Of course you're frightened. Of course you're guilty. How else would it be, considering our imprinting? You have nothing to say about that. A thought goes through the mind, and you're so involved in the content of the thought that you never notice what it's floating in. In fact, the difference between the psychological and the spiritual, if I could grossly oversimplify it, is that the psychological is involved in the content, and the spiritual is involved in the space in which that content is arising. So you start to see its fear, its doubt, its hatred, its anger, its guilt, staying open to the content, open enough that you start to see its impersonality, the mind, instead of my mind. And all of a sudden, at certain moments, there is a sense of this process floating in the vastness of being. The content is always being this and being that. And being this, I am this, and I am that, is the basis of all separation, and it's the reason that most of us walk around feeling like imposters most of the time. Because as soon as you connect something to I am, any this or that fractures the vastness. You've become a little bit of content, a minnow in the ocean of being. Any this and that, I am this thought, I am that thought, I am guilty, I am not guilty. Even I am God. Any addiction whatsoever to identification with the mind keeps your experience of being as small as a thought, as a bubble, passing through the vastness. As we focus on the bubble, we start to see the vastness. And it isn't I am this and I am that. It is just amness. It's ironic, we are looking all over for peace and our true being and something which we imagine will be permanent, which will be unending and edgeless and vast, that we call God, we call the divine, we call our true nature. And yet, it's so ironic. There's only one experience you have had your whole life that has been the same. Angry one minute, sad the next, guilty the next, proud the next. Content's always changing. The one experience you've always had that has always been the same is the sense of being. If someone says to you, do you exist? You will give all kinds of reasons why you exist, all kinds of thoughts, all kinds of bubbles. But the actual reality of how do you exist, you can't put it into words. How do you know you exist? Oh, I think you am, I is, isness am. That sense of just being. We all feel right now. Just here, just being. Not being this or that, just being. Now when we think I am this or I am that, there's 240 people in this room. And there's the basis of every holy war and every divorce and every murder and every confusion and every suicide that ever existed. When we just say I am, there's only one being in this room. Being itself. Just and feel, where's the edge on it? Edges on every this and that edges on every content, but just am, just the ocean of being in which all this content is floating, where's the edge? But that's scary. We need, as our friend said, we need to have some confines around us so we feel secure. So we go back to adding thises and that's to I am, because the vast don't know freedom is terrifying. Because we don't know who is relating from what point. There's nothing under our feet. To start to get a sense of the vastness in which all this content is arising, without pushing away the least content, without needing to get stuck in any I am thises or that's, including the thought I am this or that. Just another bubble passing through the vastness, like minnows in this ocean.
There are some people who I do not know, and there are some places that I cannot go. But I am sure of this one thing, that my God is real, for I can feel Him in my soul. Yes, my God is real. He's real in my soul. My God is real, for He has washed and made me whole. His love for me shines like pure gold. My God is real, for I can feel Him in my soul. Yes, my God is real. He's real in my soul. My God is real, for He has washed and made me whole. His love for me shines like pure gold. My God is real, for I can feel Him in my soul. Yes, my God is real. He's real in my soul. My God is real, for He has washed and made me whole. His love for me shines like pure gold. My God is real, for I can feel Him in my soul. Yes, my God is real. He's real in my soul. My God is real, for he has washed and made me whole. His love for me, it shines like pure gold. My God is real, for I can feel him in my soul. My God is real, for I can feel him in my soul.